Alors, à venir, à l'Agile Tour 2019, il y aura le cocktail de réseautage, le tirage des prix de présence, mais tout d'abord, la dernière conférence de la journée qui a pour thème « Why on time, on budget, on scope doesn't work ». Si on traduit ça vite, vite, pourquoi livrer à temps dans les budgets et avec une portée fixe, ça ne fonctionne pas. Notez que cette conférence sera présentée en anglais. Notre prochain invité est ici pour faire la lumière sur le Evidencebased Management, qui est un cadre développé par Scrum.org pour aider les organisations à mesurer, gérer et augmenter la valeur qu'elles retirent de la livraison de leurs produits. C'est avec beaucoup de plaisir qu'on accueille à l'Agile Tour Québec 2019 la co-auteure du livre The Nexus Framework of Scaling Scrum. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for the first time in Quebec City, Patricia Kong.
Merci. Bonjour, Québec. We just had a little technical incident here, so if anything happens further, we'll be okay. But I'm gonna make sure that you have fun at the end of the session. Je sais bien que c'est moi entre vous et le happy hour, le 5 à 7. C'est pas la même chose en France, le 5 à 7. Anyways, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we've been researching at scrum.org for the past 6 years, actually. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking about now. And then also, I want you to get thinking about what you would like to do in the future of Agile. Okay? So we're going to have fun, and then we're going to have apéro, and it's going to be a great day. Okay, why on time, on budget, fixed scope doesn't work? And there was a really good talk that talked a lot about the almost like OKR's outcome output. So that was a really great talk that complements this. Okay, a little bit about me. I'm the product owner at scrum.org of our enterprise solutions. So that means what works in the team. I'm thinking about how do we make that work on a larger scale in the organization. I wrote a book. I'm a mentor for young people in the United States for 18 to 21-year-old kids who don't have the same opportunities. I have a background in organizational behavior. Like every good Chinese American, I came through banking and finance. And I've been learning and continuously learning agility and Scrum. I used to live in Paris. That's why I speak some French. Okay, let's get started. So who here is familiar with scrum.org? Okay, good, thank you. So the one thing that I want to make sure that everybody knows is that scrum.org is about improving the profession of software delivery. And what you don't see there is something about Scrum or something about Agile. It's about professionalism, right, and software delivery. Hi, Yamanput, Ken Schwaber. He and I are friends. So he owns Scrum.org, for those of you who are not familiar with Scrum.org, and he is the co-creator of the Scrum framework. All right. So for over the past decades, organizations have been rushing to Agile and Scrum. They're rushing. They got to do that, right? And what we call that at Scrum.org, or what I call it, is a Scrum-pede. Just bunch of animals. They're running. We got to do Scrum. We have to do Agile. Everybody's doing it. It looks good over there. I better do it over here, right? Sounds correct? So let's do it. So an organization, some executive, usually it starts that way, sees that there's some Scrum and Agile, and it's working really well over there. So what do? They say, let's do it everywhere. Does this sound correct? Yeah? So they say, let's do it everywhere, and that's fair because they see something good happening in their company and they want to copy and paste it. Okay, so we're going Agile. Let's do it. How does that happen? We use waterfall to do it. And how does waterfall look? Well, in traditional organizations, what that means is that we're going to have a plan how we create our Agile transformation. And we're going to do that by figuring out how many Scrum Masters, how many coaches, how many teams we need. Okay, that one's not working anymore. Can you leave me one of the screens? So we're going to do that with the number of coaches, we're going to do that with the number of the teams, and we're going to know we're successful when we meet plan. We're all marching towards going agile. So what could possibly go wrong? The executive come back and said, "You spent my money. We agile yet?" What do you say? You go, we were trying, and here's what the thing is that we start to think very much and revert to what we already know. So we start to talk in terms of output of the things that we can count. So when we translate that into agile language, we'll talk about user stories, points, we're gonna use t-shirt sizing. You know, before they talked about gummy bears and all these things. We're gonna say, oh, we did this. We had this much velocity. We had these much things. And they take that and they report that, and then someone in finance puts a cost to it, right? Same shit, different day. That's what that is, okay? So I'm gonna tell you some other things that even in 2019, I hear people in teams and organization, what they tell me. I'm gonna change it a little bit because it's being recorded. Usually I like Vegas rules when I present. But I was talking to a product owner, and he said, "Patricia, it's great. We're going to Agile. We're using Scrum. Our predictability is up. 90%, it used to be in the 40s. I am so happy. This Scrum stuff, this Nexus stuff, it really works." What I think he's saying, we need to accurately plan. He's saying same thing. And what I think he's thinking about, are people screwing up if they're not predictable? Shouldn't people be predictable? Okay, here's another conversation. Scrum Master. "Patricia, we're scaling." The Nexus thing. "We're scaling, we have more teams. And you know what? Our velocity hasn't fallen." I don't know how that would be possible, but okay. Must be because when you add an extra team, you absolutely get more work done. Okay. That's what I think he's saying. People are machines. That's what I think his teams think he's saying. And this is the thing that he might be asking himself, is the team scared? Are the numbers you're looking at real? Is it being gamed? We don't know. That's just what I think. So what I think is that in terms of what you're measuring, whether you're going through an agile transformation or not, or whether you're looking at the value of your product delivery, what you measure says a lot about your mindset. And that translates into an organization. So what works in one small space and you copy and paste it doesn't necessarily work. I'll add another one. I was talking to someone and he said, the agile transformation is working because the time that it takes for an idea to get off the idea backlog to the portfolio management backlog has gone down from 18 months to 12 months. Guess who said that? An agile coach. So what I think that person was trying to say is, I'm a valuable agile coach. Anyways. Using progress, as we know, as your main guide, it does not mean that it's not important, but as your main guide, if you are successful, is misaligning business and IT. And I used to work at Forrester Research, and we were talking about business and IT over 10 years ago, right? But still, that's what's misaligning it, and it's what is creating the iron triangle for the IT organization. And it is what keeps IT as a cost center. So when I said you're measuring the same thing, different day, I'm being very honest that you're taking that and you're assigning cost rather than thinking about value. What value are we producing? And this is not phenomenally new or anything, right? We know that software, that things that we build and create are creating value. So why do we measure everything in cost? That's not to say cost is not important, okay? So we know that Agile stalls when our goals are not aligned, right? If one's trying to create value and one's trying to manage costs and without looking at things holistically, we stay in this traditional mindset. So traditional mindsets means we have to maximize efficiency. This stuff you all know, right? Industrial age, all that stuff. The Agile mindset says that we have to maximize learning and innovation. And that's because what we want is we want effectiveness. And agility is about effectiveness, whereas the side put of that is efficiency, okay? So when we think about that, we're looking at two different areas. One says, let's try to keep things very small. Let's try to think about resource utilization, where resource means people. And the other one said, let's have this mindset of actually learning and doing that quickly. So what's really driving Agile adoption? Let's take it back. So what's driving Agile adoption is that we used to be in this mindset. Big companies, we have the smart persons in the business, they know everything, and then somebody gives you money. That actually looks like Chinese chocolate coins. I should have chosen a better picture. Chinese chocolate coins are very valuable. Okay, so we used to be in this, the organization is important. The firm is the king, fat emperor, fat cat. Now we have a radical shift in focus because of politics, because of technology, because of people's desires. Okay, so what does that mean? Customers want change, and they need it quickly. Because we are in a different world, and there's the different people who have different voices. So the customer, if we're focused on the customer, that's great. They can be in the center, but they are not always right. So here are some organizations that are pretty smart organizations who talk about that. At Google, only about 10% of its experiments led to business changes. It's been humbling how rare it is for features to succeed on the first attempt. 80% of the time, we're wrong about what the customer wants. Remember the predictability thing I was talking about? Only a third of ideas tested on the experimentation platform at Microsoft improved the metrics that were designated to be there. So what can we do? We can't predict what customers want, so what we know and why we talk about empiricism is how do we run experiments and get through things quickly. So this should look very familiar to you. At first, at the top of the circle, we would think about identifying an opportunity, understand desired outcomes, evaluate possible solutions, build at least a part of it, which means let's test it. You don't even have to build it. Let's test the idea, and then deploy and measure. Now, I've added a couple things in here. I actually added them last night. What you can see is evaluate possible solutions. I think there's something missing. When we're talking about what we're trying to pursue, and a lot of people say, you know what, this is all great, but it's management's problem. And I think that we have to realize this relationship is a two-way street, like a parent with a child. Tell the story, get buy-in, tell the right story. How do you talk to them? And then when we do that and we test it and we get some feedback, tell the story again. Get that feedback. What did you do with my $100,000, our $100,000? What did we get out of that? What were the results? What information would you show? That's what that executive needs, right? And maybe the idea, the opportunity, was the executive's idea, but we should show her the results. Okay, So identify an opportunity, we get that, understand desired outcomes. I want to make it very real to you what an outcome is, and I'll give you examples from companies I work with also. So here's the hashtag for the conference. Hashtag ATQC19. My Twitter handle is @PMoonK88. I was not born in 1988. Chinese people just like the number 8, okay? I would like you to take your phones at your tables and take the best selfie. Take the best selfie you can, hashtag that, tag me if you want, and the best selfie, I will send you a surprise from scrum.org. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, I haven't figured that out yet, but I will, okay? 2 minutes at your tables, if you want, take the best selfie. I'll either send you a copy of my book, a copy of Ken Schwaber's book, maybe a copy of the new Scrum Master book, maybe a scrum.org shirt, maybe scrum.org glasses. I don't know, I have a lot of stuff at the office. Take your selfie, you have 2 minutes. Le meilleur selfie, je cherche le meilleur selfie. C'est bon? Vous l'avez fait? Ladies and gentlemen, that's an outcome. You wanted the best selfie, correct? We wanted the best picture. Did you think about your screen? Did you think about your camera? Were you thinking about features and products? No. You were thinking about taking the best selfie to win some stuff from me. Thank you. Feature, here's another example, right? We can think of the same person who's trying to get that same outcome. How do I look so good in myself? How do I make my food look beautiful when I take it? And then how do I send those pictures to my friends? That is why young people like WhatsApp, because you can filter it, put a filter on it, and then you can get the picture in high quality. That's what they care about, right? They're not looking at the OLED display, they're not thinking about all these things. They're thinking about, can I take a picture? Can I get my selfie? Can I send it to my friends? Be very cool. This is a very big stereotype of young people, I'm very sorry, but it's good for the story. And then they want their phone to work. They don't want it to run out of battery, right? That's an outcome. That's how we get thinking about things. So those are some great resources that talk about outcomes that I would suggest you read. Sense and Respond is an excellent book that talks about how do you run little experiments, what's actually possible, okay? So when we start to do that, when we start to think about what actually potentially do my customers want, and how would I think about that in terms of value, now we can start planning and investing a little bit differently. I would even go as far to say, I'm doing research in the portfolio management space, is that when we're not thinking in this way, organizations, companies are wasting money, effort, time, your time, their time, my time. And if they were thinking about what was actually delivering value and they did it quickly, they would deliver a lot more value. So we have to think about what are the gaps of what we're trying to fill. Are there things that we're creating or building that add no value? A lot of time, yes. Can we use those? Can we think about our customers to plan releases? And by the way, could we break those now down into sprints? I'm a Scrum person. Can we get that feedback and go back? And how do we make this transparent? I will tell you one big reason why it's not usually transparent and as easy as this in all organizations in Europe and Asia that I visit. It's because people don't know the goal that they're working toward. So then they don't know what they should be choosing potentially to experiment with. And that's a really big problem, especially when the fact that the people who are actually building the solutions here are 6.5 times less likely to know why they're doing it. Developers are 6.5 times less likely, and this is from Forrester Research 2017. The managers usually know why. They have some sort of business goal. But for some reason, there's a disconnect still with the development team, which is weird because Agile, they say 80% of teams are using Agile, but somehow we're not communicating. And people aren't stupid, right? If you give them the why, then we can march toward that goal together. All right. So developers aren't aware of why they're doing what they're doing. They're not thinking really about users and customers. So that creates a disconnect. And that creates a lot of questions you have to ask people. And so the problem with this is that it creates a lot of lag time, right? We're talking about Agile. It's being quick, being able to inspect and adapt and respond. And when we don't do that, we lose a chance for agility. So I think that the opportunity for your teams to talk to actual customers or users is a chance to encourage agility. And some people are scared, they don't want to talk to customers. Maybe that's a teaching moment. You know, you figure it out. But the reason this is important, besides aligning people together to a goal and understand why they're doing things, is that very much like it costs money to context switch, it costs a lot of money to make decisions. So here's this data from the Standish report last year. So if we imagine that a project costs $800,000, we can imagine we have two types of teams. And what they found is that the companies where the teams, first of all, they're operating on smaller projects, but they could make the decisions because they had the autonomy, spent less monies in terms of the costs that went to the project, okay? So latency skills, the ability to make decisions. Now, number of decisions, let's say it's 1,000, 1 hour per decision, number of hours 1,000, cost of decisions is $200,000, high, on the high end. That means the project cost $1 million. The success rate when we're operating at this level is higher. Failure, a little bit lower, as compared to, in the second column, when we have a team that isn't empowered, like Mathieu was talking about, empowered to make decisions, right? And this is a question about product ownership. This is a question about autonomy, delegation. Number of hours, 5,000. Cost of decisions, 1 million, 1.8 million. For a project that is 15% chance of succeeding. This costs matter, right? So these are things that you can think about and start to explore, and it wouldn't be that hard to pull this. And of course, there's different levels, but I want to give you the extreme. There's a lot of times we throw millions of dollars at projects. So how do we think about these things? All right. So we talked about outcomes, and we talked about the idea of circulating quickly, evaluating possible solutions, building a part of it, measuring it. How do we measure here? Well, what are we measuring? Here's a little exercise for you. Hopefully you have pens and paper. If you don't, ask your neighbor. We're in Canada, you guys are kind. I would like you to take 1 minute and write down all the things you and your team measure. that you can think of. 45 seconds. Yeah, 5 more seconds. Okay, so hopefully you have the measures that you're capturing. If not, do it later. I'm going to explain to you how I think about what we're measuring. Activity is something that we're doing, right? It's just something that we're doing. Number of meetings, how much time we spend coding, how much time we spend in meetings. It's just stuff we're doing. Activities create outputs, the stuff that's produced, right? Number of releases, number of features, number of stories completed, something you can count. So we have activities that create outputs. The outputs create the customer outcomes, right? The customer outcome being, how do we know that customer is satisfied? How do we know they're using it? When we look at that, that creates the business impact, creates the money, creates costs. Think about it that way, okay? Activities, outputs, outcomes, business impacts. Look at your list. Circle your customer outcomes. I'll give you 10 seconds. All right. Put an A next to your activities on your list. Put an O next to the outputs. Draw a dollar sign next to the business impacts. How many people had customer outcomes? One 1%, 2% of the room? How many people had 2 customer outcomes? What are you guys doing, Quebec? Okay. Now let me give you an example of a customer outcome because I'm talking about outcomes and measuring value, right? So here's an example. I talk about this often, this client that I was working with, where what I asked them simply is, what does your customer want from your product? Remember, we took the selfie, we wanted to look fabulous, send it to Patricia. What does your client want from your product? And what they were building was a healthcare, their healthcare SaaS, and they were building on their platform a billing product. So what that means was that doctors were using it to submit their claims to insurance. This is in the United States. So when I said, what do your clients want from it? What they said is, well, they want to shorten the amount of time it takes for them to submit their claim and maximize the amount of time it takes, maximize the amount of money they get back. Very specific. So when people ask me, what should we be measuring? You know better is the answer. There are certainly some suggestions, but that is the one exercise, if you could go through your products, I would go through. It's to think about what is the one thing my customer wants from my product or service, and try to figure that out. And that in itself would be great in measuring value for your customer. And when we start to talk about value, now we can talk about evidence-based management, EBM, right? So what I was just talking about is the upper right-hand circle, current value. And when we look to the left, we have something called unrealized value. So current value says, what are we delivering now to our customers? How can we do that? How happy are our employees to do that? And then unrealized values, what aren't we looking at? How do we look outside of what we know? What opportunities could we pursue? Are there opportunities? Are there gaps? How would you measure that? The bottom two circles, time to market, ability to innovate, is usually where people come when they say, oh, we got to do Agile and Scrum, we need to go faster. Those are just your organizational capabilities that support you in your effort to deliver value. So let's look a little bit more about this. And you can read a lot of this online. So current value is the value delivered to your customer today, right? That one exercise I just gave you, figuring out why and what your customers want, is a powerful question because you can start measuring that. A lot of times it's in your systems, and you just need to have a conversation about how to make that transparent. The other thing that's important here is employee satisfaction, right? Your employees leave, you guys leave, you've taken away a lot of that knowledge away with you. And a lot of the times people say, oh, the employees, are they just happy? How do we know? You know, and I might say, okay, well, if you can't take a formal employee, you know, do something at the retrospective, just ask happiness card. But then sometimes what I do is, depending on the politics of the company, I might ask something like, so if you got offered another job for the same amount of money, would you leave? And I did that actually at a company, and 60% of the team said yes. I took this information to the CEO. Nothing. Right? And that tells you a lot. So when you ask very, very direct questions, you will get a very focused answer. Think about those kind of things. All right, so current value is how much value you're delivering to your customers today. Time to market is how quickly can you actually improve your current value. So there's a lot of things that we can measure here. The one thing that might look a little different to you is the time to learn. How much time does it take to learn from the experiences that we've had? When we make mistakes, when we don't. What is that time to learn in there? That's something that might be helpful. Ability to innovate is how effective are you at improving your current value. So here we're thinking really about innovation in terms of how fast you can go, but really what's holding you back. So here it becomes interesting because a lot of the times you have organizations that just say, more, we need more. We need to innovate, add more features, they're blowing us out of the water, add more stuff. When you start to measure their innovation rate or things like their installed version index, you will find a lot of information. So much like the airplane story, we're working with clients where, I think it was the CIO, more, we need more, we need innovation, that's our thing, that's our brand, we need that, okay. And what we saw in doing some measurement here was that, first of all, customer satisfaction was low in the product, and he said they're not getting new enough stuff. Okay, let's look. Also, what we found was, in terms of the installed version index, a majority of the customers were 2 versions back, at least. And the teams were spending so much money, so much time trying to support those old versions They were spending $76,000 a month maintaining that. So you take that to the CIO, and he goes, oh, let's fix that first before we add any more bloat. So we always assume we're predicting what customers want. That's not a thing. Let's take the evidence and make those decisions. And what they did was they corrected that. A lot of great things they did around great technical practices. Customer satisfaction went up. Usage went up. Saving money. That's great. And then this. When you're doing that, how do we think about, can we have an opportunity to meet some unmet needs? Is it worth it? Where are we in the market? So now what you're doing is you're able to relate this holistically in the organization, right? And now we can start to have a conversation about portfolio management because you're thinking about it from a value perspective. And when you think about that unrealized value, potentially if you can meet that, now you can come around and say, how do we invest in that? How do we invest in those outcomes? Who else could we be talking to from a very value-based perspective rather than just guessing? There's a lot of the times when they say, Patricia, Scrum.org, help us with Agile portfolio management. And you say, okay, what are you guys working on? 40 projects. What are your goals and strategies? I don't know, we'll come back. Okay, 1 week later, here are our 3 strategies and goals. Take those 40 projects. How many support those? 12. Well, you just freed up a lot of stuff. That's how I want you to start thinking about this and the opportunities. So we wrote this white paper back in May, and we're doing some more development now and going through some different process to build it up in the framework. But what we figured out, and even from the scaling conversation, is that the principles matter first. There's too much politics, too much other stuff, so where we're starting from is what are the principles we need to think about to invest in business agility. So that's online for you to read. The EBM guide, so I listed out those sample metrics, is also online. How many of you are familiar with the EBM guide? Thank you, sir. Okay, so for those of you who are not, it talks about why we were thinking about evidence-based management. There's a lot of webinars out there, but also there's an appendix where we say, for these 4 key value areas, here are some sample measures you might consider and how they might help you. Okay, so that's there. We also have an open assessment, Agile measurement open assessment, where you take the assessment preparation, usually for certification for free. That lets you know what we're thinking about. 10 questions, I think 15 minutes. That's something also that you can share with your teams and take yourself. All right, so now we're talking about systems. When we start to measure these things and we start to think about value, we can say, hey, how do these things relate to each other? A company in Brazil, they were saying, we have bad quality. We're known for bad quality. So they started to track defects. And I said, that's great. How are you tracking that? We track that in our ability to innovate. Now we're starting to track our time to market, our cycle time. We're working on those things, and now we know what's holding us back. Let's increase that. And they start to see, are our customers happier? Are we getting more engagements? Are we getting more clients? And so holistically, they're able to make that picture when they talk to management, and they said, we know that you gave us an initiative to say that we have to get more market share in Brazil. Here's what we see that's happening, and here's how we're doing it, right? Making a story, telling it, giving it back. Okay. So what I brought up several times, but not written here, is how do we understand what goals we're working on? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But when you don't, you are missing an opportunity to even use Scrum at its truest potential to continuously improve. So when we think about running experiments inspecting, measuring the numbers that are important to us, the data that's important to us, then we have a chance to say, how do we adapt to that? Let's try something else again. And really, this is where EBM comes from. So 6 years ago, we were working on something called the Continuous Improvement Framework. And evidence-based management actually became popular for us, at least, because we were saying you should measure and you should continuously improve, and then everybody said, hey, we're going to scale. We're scaling. And we said, okay, if you're scaling and you're investing millions of dollars into all your Agile transformations, make sure it's delivering you back some value. So that's where EBM is really from, but it's a part of this whole continuous improvement thinking. And the way that you can really do that is through a goal. You have a goal, you know where you are, right? I said in Brazil, they measured where are we. They run some experiments, they measure again, they're still going toward their goal. They're measuring again, the goals changed a little bit. Maybe we want to be number 2 now, we don't want to be number 1. Who knows? You measure and you hit the different goals as they come, and that is really how you have the spirit of continuous improvement. And everybody should know about it. So I talk about experimentation and empiricism a lot. And it sounds really funny and easy to do. So this is your second to last exercise. You have been at this conference all day. I do not know why you came. Maybe you needed a break. Maybe you wanted to learn something. But hopefully, you did take something that you thought was interesting that you'd like to do. I would like you to fill out this hypothesis statement. What is one thing that you think you can do when you go back to your office? Why do you think you should be doing it? But for who? So I believe doing this for these people, could be for myself, for my team, for my manager. And I will know this is true when I see this measurement changed. All right? I'm going to give you some time to do this because it's hard. And now, the thing is, if you don't identify the measurement, this is not empiricism. It's just an assertion. You see? It's hard. So hopefully, from this full day, you got some ideas. What is one thing that you think you could try when you leave here? For whom? And then how will you know that it was valuable? Otherwise, I will be talking about you at the next conference I go to and said, Quebec, they don't get it. Right. Now I'm just shaming you. I'm being a very bad American. Allez, okay. How much time do I have left? Good time? Okay, 5 minutes. I say 5, but I really mean like 2. Start. Two minutes. Okay. You got this? Now, that was just an experiment of something you could try that you learned here. You can also do this with your work, your product backlog items. We think doing this, building this feature, improving this, for these people, our customers, right, will achieve this outcome value, and we'll know that when we get feedback on this measurement, okay? You see how it's hard. That's what I want to point out. This is even harder. That's what I want to know. This is what I ask when I go to a customer, when we start to talk about goals. And if you're in that situation where you're not sure why you're doing something or building something, this is how you do it. Just keep asking the why. People like to spend money on consultants and coaches, people like me, and all we're doing is just go, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And that's why when you have portfolio management where it's just people thinking about what to do and they can't answer this, you're not really taking advantage of your teams, yourselves, and this notion of value, okay? I hope this looks familiar. So, a lot of the things that I threw at you, you know, some things you know, but some of them are hard, right? We understand the difference between outputs and outcomes, but that's hard. We know that we should be thinking about goals, but that's hard because we don't know why we're doing it, and we're not sure we are supposed to or should, or, you know, we're not even sure our CEOs know why we're doing it, and that's happened before. So these are the 5 Scrum values. And a lot of the times I think commitment is where we start. So commitment, are we committed to our team? Are we committed to working together toward a goal? Are we committed to trying to improve? That's where I think we start. But these things are values that I think don't scale easily, and the reason is because we don't actually think about them enough. So this is the thing that I'd like to ask you to do lastly, is take a second, 10 seconds, and think about which Scrum value are you struggling with right now? Professionally, personally, all right? Think about that. And now, I'd like you to talk to your neighbor about why it's hard for you. Not what you're going to do about it, but why are you struggling with that, okay? 1 minute. Okay, if you can hear my voice, clap once. Okay, if you can hear my voice, clap twice. Thank you. All right. How many of you chose courage? Stand up. Thank you for your courage. How many of you are struggling with focus? Stand up. You must be all product owners. Sit down, thank you. How many of you is commitment? Okay. What about respect? Give this gentleman a round of applause. Thank you for your courage and openness. Thank you. So maybe if you didn't have anything when we were doing that hypothesis delivery statement, think about how you could encourage yourself to increase or improve one of the values in a certain way. And you might measure it by, I don't know, not quitting, who knows, right? But this is something that you can think about and reflect upon. And it's important to me because I work with a lot of trainers and coaches, and I know this, and I know that you feel it too. While we work in very exciting times and we are in an exciting industry, it is tiring. I talked to a woman who has done, she would say, an Agile transformation, and she was talking, and it was amazing, and they were using Nexus to run their initiative, Agile initiative, and then the CEO changed. So now she has to do it all over again. All over again in terms of the feedback, how do I make my point? And I tell her, you know, if you have the evidence and data to show her of how much more value you're actually delivering to customers, how often, how happy your employees are, then that would be great, especially with the values and the principles that you possess, right? Those are the harder things, I think, to think about. How do we actually embrace the values and spread that, right? We're all change agents in that aspect. So do something good. And the thing that I'll leave you with that I think about now, especially with, you know, the United States and Hong Kong and all the stuff that's going on, do something good, right? Smart young woman said this. And that also means don't do stuff that's bad, right? So when we drive towards metrics and evidence and data, that can do bad stuff, right? All the Facebooks, the likes, and no, we're not going to get rid of political ads that are fake. It's driving what? What numbers are they geared toward? We don't want to move away from vapes or cigarettes or whatever that is. What are we trying to gauge for? I used to work in media tech. We were driving towards some numbers where we always didn't make the best decisions. So do something good. At least you did something good. All right? Thank you very much. Merci. Merci pour votre accueil. I think I took a lot of time. I will meet you at the Canadian 5 à 7 for drinks and questions. Okay? Merci.